Hi, my name is Louise Alter. I'm Head of Energy Innovation for Equans, and I'm going to talk to you today about the Dudley Net Zero Neighbourhood Programme. So I'm going to go into what the Net Zero Neighbourhood Programme is, then looking at the data, the approach and findings from that project, the community approach and findings, and then the finance approach and findings, and how that ties back together into a logic model to deliver value and outcomes and impact for the neighbourhood that we're looking at. So just to put the project into context, so the Net Zero Neighbourhood project in Dudley is part of the wider programme of the WMCA, which is looking at place-based decarbonisation within a whole system approach. So it's looking at tackling climate change, reducing household bills, increasing transport links, but also bringing the community into that and really putting it at the heart of the solution. So the program, on top of just kind of using that place-based decarbonisation approach, is going to be one of the first that does that and is really keen to use the successes and failures of the programs to generate some learnings. And as such, this project is the first of a kind and is something that is kind of looked at nationally to be deployed across the WMCA, but then also across the wider country. So what sets this project apart? So as I touched on before, it's community-centric design. So communities is really at the top of how we think about these projects. And then it works at a kind of street by street level or kind of small area basis. So the project in Dudley covers kind of an area equals to about 310 homes. And that gives you just an idea of a scale. But really, we're looking at the infrastructure, the mobility options, the green spaces around and within those 310 homes, and then at the retrofit aspect of those homes. But then also at the finance element to understand how we can create some blended finance approach where we bring together government funding to leverage private finance into a solution. So this place-based approach is really looking at creating a better place for the people that live in it, that is sustainable in the kind of more environmental sense, but also for the people that live in it and looking at the kind of future. So on the data collection side, what did we do? So we looked at monitoring temperature, humidity, electricity, and a kind of pre and post retrofit. So for all of the different buildings and within different tenures, we're looking at establishing what is the progress we are going to have made within that time. Then we're going to look at air quality, so inside and outside of the buildings. So this is really to understand how our interventions are going to provide impact on the people that live within the area. So some of the interventions around, for example, ventilations will provide quite quick impacts around air quality within homes. But at the same time, some other interventions like moving people away from cars into walking and cycling, for example, has a much longer time frame, and the air quality outside is therefore it's going to change over time much more rather than on a short time frame. And then the reporting schedule, so making sure that we understand that and that we are able to track that throughout the project. So kind of having that data approach has started to produce some findings. So some findings are really around, so the first set of findings really around EPC ratings, which we are now kind of confident that it does not at all reflect the true condition of the energy performance of the property, because really it's kind of a tick box exercise. And we knew that already before, but really the idea here is that we're able to support that with data of energy demand and utilization within the property. Then we also noticed that cavity walls are basically skewing the EPCs at the moment if they have been filled at some point, however long ago they are, or in whatever shape they are. You will have to classify those as filled, and that will impact the overall EPC rating, and therefore your access to funding as well, but will not at all reflect the quality or the comfort within the home. In terms of fuel poverty, as most of you know, within England, EPCC is considered to be kind of a benchmark for a household. So all the households that are in EPCC are therefore not in fuel poverty. We now have data to support that is not true at all, that people are still unable to heat their homes, and at the same time that they really aren't complying at all with the kind of WHO guidelines or even the UK guidelines. On the SMETS2 monitoring, that's kind of a more broad point, that SMETS2, which enables kind of exports and imports, and the monitoring of that is really controlled by the energy provider. And so there's a bit of a monopole around that to be observed. Around community engagement, our approach is really around raising awareness and understanding for the net zero neighborhood, generating insights from the community at the beginning to really inform the design, and kind of iterating the design, bringing that community insight, but also bringing that technical knowledge together to create a solution that works for the community that lives in it. So the findings around that are really around the assurances that the council brings, and how that assurance is provided to the community, and is really good in. Obviously, that will vary from kind of area to area, and from council to council, and then also from kind of property to property, whether it's an owner occupier or whether it's a social housing. But we really can see that having the local authority on board in the case of Dudley is a great kind of door opener for a first conversation. And then we've also put together kind of a small group of champions, as we call them, and they're really key to drive confidence and engagement within the local area, because they are there, they have been there before us, and they will be there after us, and really provide that kind of holistic view of the project. And obviously community spaces are key. So schools and pubs are really areas, where people aggregate around. So it's important to bring those places in, and to have those kind of the owners or the people that run these champion the project to increase the overall engagement. In terms of finance, we're trialing a blended finance model. So that means that we're going to blend different funding streams, whether they're kind of governmental, local, or charities or whatever, or even bringing in funding from private partners, or actually looking at that and how that can kind of complement each other. But then also looking at a revolving finance model, where we're looking at bringing in revenue streams so that we can kind of reinvest in the area and deliver more, because as I'm sure most of you are aware, especially around retrofit, some of the interventions are not kind of economically viable today, and therefore need support of other measures that provide better revenue streams. So the findings around that is really the appetite from the local authorities to create these revenue streams and to create that revolving funding model is really there. Then one of the best places to get that from, as I'm sure a lot of you would have expected, is solar. So solar as a service, where you start generating some revenues. So not just on commercial buildings, kind of on commercial rooftops, but also how can we think about that in terms of private rooftops, in terms of generating revenue to deliver more measures. So this is all kind of brought together. These are different elements, and within the project, we don't really want to think about it in terms of elements that are discrete and kind of work on their own. They really are all contributing to outcomes and impacts that the local authority, Dudley, but also the funder, WMSA, want to see in the medium and long term. So it's really important for us to track those things, and to really have a logic model and a logic chain that brings us from the input to the activity to the output, outcome in the medium term, and impact in the long term, so that we can really think about those longer term projects that are looking at net zero in 2041 or 2050, whenever kind of the objectives are set. So by having this logic model, we're hoping to kind of bring confidence into our solution, and create kind of some real impact in terms of how we communicate, both with the kind of financial market, with the wider infrastructure holders, but also with the community, to make sure that they understand how their decisions and how the work we have done delivers for them as a project, kind of building that confidence. But then also in terms of transparency, it's really important around decision making to deliver that for the community and all of the stakeholders, really being able to kind of track back on why we did different things. And that is really where we then think that could bring in outcome-based funding, which would unlock kind of additional revenue streams above and beyond the kind of more standard and really technical solar as a service type solution. So I think that's it from me. I'll take any questions if there are any.